Smell it? Or is it just me? Is it up here? It smells like a sub sandwich or something. Onions, ham maybe? Interesting. All right. Turn this so you can see. All right, good to see you all on this pretty day. Good to see you all again. Just to remind you, please remember that our first quiz starts tomorrow. So Friday evening, I will put up quiz number 1, and you'll have a week to take it. So just be aware of that. And it'll cover everything we've covered since the beginning of the course. I won't ask any questions about the syllabus. Don't worry about that. Hello, sir. But I will ask questions about everything else, or most of everything else that we've been covering. So just be aware of that. Are you Mr. Fiorentino? Oh, okay, good. Hey. Okay, whoops. Actually. Okay. So let's continue on. Let me get my notes here. Get that for later. That for later. Not this. And we will move on to our first real topic. I was kind of giving you an introduction to the foundations of Christian faith, what Christian faith is about, obviously Jesus. But now we're getting into our real first topic, which is sources of authority. Okay, where does Christianity or Christians themselves find or derive the authority for their beliefs, or how they believe and what they believe? And, you can pretty much figure out that it goes back to this dude. Yeah. If that's what he looked like. I don't know. I didn't see Jesus, but, that's what he looked. I mean, we'll see later, and I have other pictures on other PowerPoints with some of the earliest images that Christians drew of Jesus, and he wasn't like this at all. He looked like a young man, no beard, short hair, kind of like a philosopher in a way, and then this image developed. So maybe it's accurate to how Jesus looked. I don't know. For all I know, he was bald like me, had no hair or little hair. But he is the ultimate source of authority. What is an authority? Let's define our terms first to know what we're talking about. What is an authority? There's your definition. An authority. A person or thing that determines your thoughts or behaviors. Comes from the Latin word auctor, from which we get our word author as well. An author simply means originator. You'll hear this again, Mr. Morita, in Encountering Sacred Writings. That's an important point to make, because author doesn't necessarily mean that you wrote a book or you wrote anything. It's the original meaning of the word is something who just is the originator, the origin of something. Creator as well, maker, but also can have a more conceptual idea of a model or a pattern. An author can be something that's a model or a pattern. And that's in the case of authority, because an authority is something or someone, some person that you model yourself, you pattern yourself after that person or that thing. And we all have experience with authority, okay? You're having experience right now. I'm an authority, all right? The first class we went over the syllabus. That's an authority. That's something that I originated to explain what I expect for the course. And you're patterning your behavior based on that syllabus, deciding what you want to do, what you don't want to do, what you might do, what you probably won't do, which hopefully you won't do, like plagiarize or something like that. But it's an authority. The syllabus is an authority. And ultimately it comes from me, who is the originator of it. I'm the authority. But we all have it. So we have experience with people or things that control us. That's what authority does. It's control, which I know maybe for some people is a bad word, but, we're controlled. There are all sorts of things telling us what to do that we can choose to follow or not to follow, with various consequences, or maybe no consequences sometimes, but oftentimes with consequences. every speed limit sign on my way here was an authority. It was set up by somebody, decided by the legislature, I'm assuming, or maybe it was decided by the Department of Transportation with the authority given to them by the legislature of Pennsylvania. I don't know. But, we have all sorts of things. Parents, teachers, the police, our coaches. If you want to play, then you show up on time and you show up for the practices. Why? Because the coach tells you to, and you do what the coach or coaches tell you to do during your practice. You don't have to do it. I mean, you can question everything that they ask you to do, but then you'll sit on the bench. They don't have to put you in. Well, maybe they have to give you some time. I don't know if you're under contract, like if they're paying you millions of dollars in the NFL, then they have to sneak you in every now and then. So, because you're getting paid. But, they don't have to put you in if you're going to be difficult and not going to do what they're asking you to do, challenge their authority. Usually, authority is intended, or it should be, I hope, to be benign, good, okay, a helpful reality. Hopefully the syllabus is not an oppressive authority. It's meant to be a helpful reality to give you times and dates and let you know when things are due. Also give you my expectations. Clearly, I know it's a long syllabus, but, hey, it's just the way it is. I mean, when I was growing up, you got like maybe a page or two for a syllabus with just bare bones information, but now they want you to spell everything out. So there it is, but hopefully it's helpful to let you know what's going on and what you can do if you have problems in the course or questions and stuff like that. So it's a reality. It's not just a religious reality. There are authorities and sources of authority for just about everything, all right, that we have. And eventually some of you will be an authority. Maybe not all of you, but, you'll be fathers and mothers, and you'll be telling this other independent little creature what to do with his or her life, And then you'll find out where your mom and dad are getting gray hair. I'm trying to help you, but I'm just going to do it my own way. I'm still going to touch the stove and burn myself. I'm still going to suck on that penny and try to swallow it. Another trip to the hospital. Yes. Anyways, so the Catholic Church has authorities too. And Christianity has authorities too for how it views and approaches the world and human life. Okay, I think that's legitimate. I mean, religion can have authorities. It's just like anybody else. I mean, why can't religion? Why is it like, when it's politics or something, I got to go out and vote. I have to go to church. Well, religion has authorities too, which determine how the church acts in the world and how the Christian community views human life. And these authorities comprise overarching governing principles or presumed standards for how if you say you're a Christian, or you're claiming to be a Christian, how you are to live and to think and to believe. Okay, so what are the sources of authority for Christian belief? Hopefully, you've done, the reading from the Catechism, which hopefully wasn't too long, but you have some idea of where the Catholic Church sees authority or sees her authorities coming from. That's interesting. I wonder. Oh, there we go. So I thought I put a picture on there. This is just a picture of, I believe it's Pope Benedict. It is Pope Benedict XVI kneeling in front of an image of his authority. Usually when a person is lower, actually physically places himself or herself lower than something, they're indicating symbolically that something is over them, something transcends them. So here's an image of Christ on the cross. He's showing even the Pope should kneel to Christ. He is the ultimate authority for Christians, even for the Bishop of Rome, but for all Christians. Okay? What are the two basic sources of authority are reason and faith, our thought, our thinking processes, and our beliefs. What we have belief in. That might surprise some people because oftentimes, usually if you're a comedy club or something, it's been fashionable over the last maybe 10 years to knock religion and do a bit about religion and stuff. And, people might be surprised and say, oh, religion or faith is believing in things without, having any reason to believe them. You have no facts. So you believe in it. That's the whole purpose of belief. No, that's not what faith is about. Faith and reason cooperate and interact. Our thinking, we're supposed to think about what we believe and why we believe, and also to hopefully believe. We have reasons for why we believe. No pun intended. What is reason? Start with reason. Reason is an act of our mind, or in more philosophical language, our intellect, which is just a Latin term, intelligo, which means to understand. Whoops. Should keep this more. Okay, good job. There, anyways. Intelligo simply means to understand in Latin. So an act of the mind, intellect, you can also say the brain if you want, by which the human mind thinks, theorizes, and understands in an orderly way. Okay, so thinking, so there's thought, there's concepts that pop up into the head, into the brain. We can theorize, we can take those concepts and we can put them together and connect them and maybe come up with new ideas and new concepts, or try to understand how these concepts work. And of course, understanding is another thing, is to make the connections, make logical connections, hopefully logical connections between the concepts that are in our mind, so that we're hopefully making sense of reality, what we see in front of us. And see, the word reason comes from the Anglo-French word raison. To remember that a lot of, we were kind of lucky about 1,000 years ago that the French, bunch of northern French invaded England and actually took over the place. They even took over the monarchy. So the kings and queens of England for a while, for a few centuries, were actually of French ethnicity ruling over the English. And so they spoke French in the court. So, if you wanted to speak to the aristocrats, you had to learn French. And so all these thousands and thousands of French words entered into English, which is a Germanic language, really, originally, in its root. So you have a large percentage of Germanic is still the base of our English, of our language, but you have a large component of these French, ultimately Latin-based terms that have come into English. And so you have this mixture. So one of those words is reason. This is not a Germanic word. It comes to us from Latin through French. In Latin, it's based on, ratio is the word in Latin. It's based on the verb reor, which means to calculate, to believe. Interestingly enough, it has that reasoning, has a sense of belief. Because I guess you are kind of having faith that your mind's working accurately. Because you could be schizophrenic, and you could think it's like you're a crusader from the Middle Ages and you have to kill all the infidels, and that makes sense to you in your mind. Everything's connecting together. But no, it's 2024 and the Middle Ages are a long time ago. There are no crusades, it's not reality anymore. Might have been reality a long time ago, but not anymore. So there is some belief. You believe it, even though you might think you're reasoning correctly. So there's some belief. But also, Reor has the sense of simply thinking, but also imagining stuff. That's what a lot of thinking occurs. Albert Einstein called them thought experiments, because he did a lot of them. I don't think he wrote a lot. And he didn't conduct a lot of experiments. He usually did them in his head and then would write stuff down. He didn't go out and try to prove them and stuff like that. He turned out to be right on a lot of things. But yeah, because it's an experiment that you do when you have no funding. You have no money. Basically, you have no money, you have no support. So, I'll think, It's a thought experiment. So, Rheor, reason. Okay, trying to organize the concepts in our mind, okay, in an orderly way so that they make sense and are in accordance with the truth and with reality. And what is faith? Faith is belief, essentially. You can also say trust as well. It's faith. Ultimately, it's faith in God. I'm talking here about theological faith. In a general sense, when we use the word faith, it can just mean, you're trusting the authority of somebody else. If you're out with a friend and the friend says, "Oh, I saw your boyfriend or girlfriend, at the club the other day with somebody else." Oh. Which could be completely innocent, of course. A person could just bump into somebody and hey, but if they're hanging all over each other, then you can reason to the fact that they might be amorous, "Oh, well, I thought she was my girlfriend, but apparently she's not. She's stepping out with other people." Now, I'm basing that on trusting the person who told me if I didn't see it myself. But even if I saw it, I'm still trusting my eyes, that my eyes are giving me accurate information, because even what you see is indirect. We don't see anything directly. Light is reflected into our eye, so I'm not directly seeing you at all. You're not seeing me. Light is being reflected into your eye, and then going through nerves and being translated by your brain into images. Okay, a whole bunch of things are going on. So it's faith. So it's not just faith in God, but ultimately it is. When we talk about theological faith, right there what you used to be. I gotta push on. Like St. Martin crossing the Jordan, in the boat, St. Michael. Faith, belief in God in what He reveals to me. Why? Based on the fact that God doesn't have to prove it. He's truth by nature. He is true by nature. Okay? He is truth itself. He is by nature trustworthy because He's real. He's the really real, you might say. If He's not, then why is He God? Or it God, or whatever, There has to be some sense of, if He's a higher state of being, you would assume that He's closer to what reality really is than I am, hopefully, in my fallibleness, my error-proneness. So He's trustworthy because of who He is. Just like if your friend might be trustworthy just because of who he or she is, because they're a friend. If they're an enemy, if there's someone you think doesn't like you, then that trust factor kind of shrinks, doesn't it? You might not have so much faith if they tell you, "Oh yeah, I saw your boyfriend with another person," or your girlfriend with another person, and they were smooching or doing whatever. He's cheating on you. Yeah, but you don't like me, so you could be making this up just to hurt me. So it's also based on who you're talking about. In this case, talking about God. Again, you can see that the word faith is a Latin word. It's not a Germanic word. It comes into English, again, through the Anglo-French. Okay, these French people who invaded England. Fate, which is based on the Latin word fides, which means trust and belief, and to rely on something, to have faith in something. Let's start again with reason. These are what our terms mean. So you understand the terminology. Let's kind of delve into what these sources have to do with us or do with Christian faith. Okay? Because it seems just reasonable to me. I'm making an assumption here because I'm using my mind to reason about something that's reasonable, and my mind is kind of, it's like the chicken and the egg. Which comes first, reason or my mind that helps me to reason? But that's for a philosophy course, not for here. So anyone taking epistemology? Do we have epistemology? Dr. Messina or no? Anyone taking any philosophy courses? No? They offer them, don't they? Yeah, we're just passing them by, maybe, or thought Christian faith would be easier. I don't know. I will say this, if you are doing the health sciences, minor in philosophy, or any of the sciences, because I can tell you, because I did philosophy in my undergraduate years and stuff like that, and a lot of philosophy is involved in theology and stuff like that. And I can just tell you from experience that people who are in the sciences or in touching with the physical sciences in any way can do experiments and can, like nobody's business, they can invent things and discover things, but not necessarily think about them. Because it's not just the getting data, it's what the data means. I grew up saying in the singular, but now apparently data is a plural for a plural noun. What the data mean, okay, interpreting them, making the correct correlations. And I find that a lot of scientists can't do that. They can across the board, physicists, astronomers, biologists, they can come up with great discoveries, but they can't necessarily think properly about and make the proper connections. So do philosophy. It helps you think. Okay? At least helps you avoid pitfalls. So there it is. There's the thing. The brain. If you're a believer, and if you believe that there's an ultimate source of creation, call it God for all things, which I do, that was made by him, maybe not directly made by God, like he's putting together your brain in your mother's womb, but, through the whole natural process, God is the ultimate source of the process that made your brain. And your brain seems to be designed to think about stuff because it just does, It's like a gas engine. You turn on the ignition and it just does what it's supposed to do. So I'm assuming, I can't prove it, that the brain was made to think because I'm just doing it. Maybe you are too. I hope. That's not why you came to university, Ms. Murray. Not to think? How dare you? So here it is. So I have I think a physical proof that the God I believe in wants me to think. He didn't create me as a robot or a puppet, a robot that I can just just crank up the key and off I go. And I'm not a puppet, that he's got to, okay, I think I'm free, but really, God wants me to make the sign of the cross now. Oh, okay, God wants me to go to church now. Apparently, God didn't do that. We're free agents, okay? We're not robots or puppets. Not everyone thinks that. I mean, I remember listening to, he's part of the New Atheist movement, a guy named Sam Harris. You can find him on the internet, on YouTube and whatnot. But he's a neurobiologist. And through studying neurobiology, the chemical processes in the brain, that's what he thinks. We're just basically biochemical puppets. We're not really making free choices. It's the chemicals and the neurons firing in our brain from our genetics and whatever that make us believe what we want to believe, feel what we want to feel, do what we want to do, what we think we want to do. But it's an illusion. For Christianity, reason is not an illusion. It's something given to us by God. It's not created necessarily by the brain. It's an activity of our soul. It's an evidence for our soul. The brain participates in it. You need a brain to activate it and to use it. And if the brain is damaged, then this activity can be damaged as well. It won't work properly. But why would God give that to me? Why would God give me something that can actually think about stuff and maybe arrive at false conclusions, Even to the point that I could deny there's a God, like, say, a person like Sam Harris. He would say my belief in God is predetermined by up here, the way my brain has been formed. It disposes me to belief. Disposes me to believe in something supernatural, you might say. But Christianity believes that God made human beings, made you and me, us, to think about the world in which we live, to think about it, And hence, that's why religion and science go together. And you can see this. I mean, don't believe that there's the mythology that, science and religion don't go together. But just read the history, pick up a book, maybe a small one. Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones? Is that right? Ms. Jones, Carrie Jones? All right. Because I got to remind myself. Okay. Pick up a small book on just the history of science. Anywhere on the planet. Not Western culture, Indian culture, Native American culture. You've got this mixture just of religious stuff and scientific endeavor, and out of that develops modern science. Okay, you can't disentangle the two. I mean, now you can, but in the history you certainly couldn't, because people were thinking about the world they lived in, and they were religious beings, so they thought about them religiously. God also gave us a brain and reason to make decisions on how to live in that world, which entails freedom, which I think I'll talk about later. Maybe I will. We'll see. So God gives us an intellect, as I spelled out for you before, an intellect, which is the power or the ability for the human mind to reason and understand. And I already defined for you what intelligo means, to understand, basically, in Latin. I don't know how to prove the intellect to you. How do you prove it, Do you understand, Mr. Mole? No? Really? So, and recognize when you don't understand, which means you must have the ability to understand, right? Imply, you can infer, yes? How do I prove that? Can I take the intellect out of my brain and throw it on the table for you? No, you just do it. And it develops. We know it develops, because I know when I was a kid, and I like to read a lot of books. Maybe you can tell this, and this is part of my history. But, I just love languages, and I always did. Maybe it's because of the biochemical processes in my brain, but I just always found languages fascinating. So I read a lot of books and stuff like that. And I remember that my understanding developed. There were things in the book that I had to keep reading over and over. They just did not make sense to my mind. Now I understand them, or at some point I started to understand them when I became an adult, but I didn't really understand them when I was 14. I didn't know enough. I hadn't experienced enough. My brain also hadn't probably made all the connections that it needed to make. It's only until like the mid-20s or something that your brain is fully formed, actually. Your brain. So for many of you in this class, your brain is still in the developmental stage for another few years. And then you hit your late 30s and early 40s, and the brain starts to fall apart. So you got that one brief 10-year, 15-year window of goodness. So use it well, people. Don't go bungee jumping and get yourself killed. Do something good for the world. Anyways, so the brain has an intellect. You can understand. I mean, in scientific language, you would call this an axiom. It's axiomatic. There are principles, many principles in the sciences, for example, that are simply unprovable. You simply have to accept that they are in order to do science. And they're called axioms. They don't require a proof. How do you prove that number 2 is really 2? Just is, otherwise you can't do math. So the intellect is the place where the human mind exercises reason. We infer things, from some information we can infer something else. You can infer from the fact that, I can infer, let's put it this way, from the fact that you're all here in class that you were born. That somewhere along the line, you went through the birth canal of some woman, and here you are, baby, 20-some years later, okay? I can infer that, even though I wasn't there and I didn't see it, for any of you. So we can infer, we can deduce, we can make deductions. Okay? It's like that. We can derive things as conclusions from data. All right? Scientists and astronomers could look at certain data, mathematical data and measurements, and they could decide or figure out, even way back thousands of years ago with some of the Greek astronomers, they could figure out that the Earth must be curved. Had they ever seen a picture of the Earth from the moon or from space? No. But they knew from the mathematics and their measurements that it had to be curved, even though they couldn't physically show you that there was a curvature to the planet, that it wasn't a flat mass. All right? They made a conclusion based on the data. We do the same thing all the time. We can do that on the physical realm. We can do that on the spiritual realm. Part of having a brain and having an intellect and to understand things, understand the world, what's the purpose of it? As I said, it's to help us to understand the world, but why? We're not just disembodied minds who just simply want to understand the world, and that's that. Okay? We're not eternal brains. We have bodies, and we have to choose to do things. We choose to act. And so what comes into play is this idea of the will, which is our ability or our ability or our power that we have to make choices, to act or not act. Here the word comes from Old English wulan, which simply means to want to do something, to have a desire or a wish. As an exercise of the will. And the products of the will, I guess you could say, are choices. Okay, the act of exercising the will is a choice. It's deciding whether or not to do something. Again, from our old friends, the French, the Norman French, from northern France. Old French, probably pronounced choisir. The French today would pronounce it choisir, but it shows you its lineage, because the Normans invaded 1,000 years ago, so they're speaking Old French, and the pronunciation was different. So they would have pronounced this choisir. And it comes into English as choice, just the ancient, but languages develop. You don't pronounce things always the same after a while. So in standard French, this became choisir, to distinguish things, to say this is this and this is not this, and to make distinctions, to discern or recognize. Ultimately, interestingly, it has this meaning of tasting, like a choice piece of meat, in the sense that you mean like tasty, it's delicious or something like that. But so it also has that connection to the physical taste. And a lot of our words, if you go back through the etymologies, even the fancy words that we use and stuff like that, or I use or whatever, a lot of times they just go back to very simple realities. The basic realities of living, eating, breathing, thinking, not thinking, but eating, breathing, stuff like that, procreating, doing things, painting, a lot of times. And then they develop into more conceptual ideas like choice. So for Christianity, humans have the ability, the freedom, I should say. If I actually get to the word freedom, probably not. The freedom, which is not to be actually, because I guess I'm using the word, but I should probably define it as well. I don't think I defined it on the PowerPoint, at least I don't see it here. But just, to give you an idea of what freedom is, it's not the ability to do what you want. Okay? It's the ability to choose to act according to reason. There's no unlimited freedom. Okay, that's never been part of the definition of freedom. The freedom is you can do anything. That's not freedom. Even God, God is free, totally free, but he has a nature, so in a good nature. So he's not free to do evil in that sense. Okay, even though he's complete freedom, but he would never act evilly because that's not part of his nature. or tell us a lie, because truth is part of his nature. We can do those things because we're changeable. You know? we can, decide to do this and not do that. But freedom simply means that you have that ability to make a choice about, according to your reason, what you're going to do, what you think you should do. But freedom doesn't, there's no free, if you think about it, even in your free actions, you have to do them within reality you're in. Okay, if you want to do, say, I want to do something, you have to do it in a body, in a physical body. Without a physical body, you can't do it. Your mind might want to do it because you say you have the freedom to do it. Yeah, but if you're a paraplegic or something, your spine is snapped and you can't move, and you're just in a wheelchair and you can't move anywhere. Well, yeah, you might want to climb a mountain, but it's not going to happen. Well, not without help. I think a paraplegic has climbed one of the mountains in the world, but obviously with help, So there's just the physical reality that limits you. It just limits you. I'm free to try to try out for the Eagles, maybe make their practice squad. But my age and the belly that I'm carrying, and the fact that my joints are all rickety, and the fact that I wasn't very athletic to begin with, I have terrible balance and stone hands. So I'm not going to be able to catch. I'm not going to be able to run. Those are limitations. But don't I have freedom to do what I want? Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, you do. But there are always limitations to our freedom. It's just the way it is. And there are consequences to our freedom as well. So that's kind of like I think a misunderstanding people have with freedom. We have freedom to create ourselves morally. Do we want to create ourselves morally as good individuals or bad? To decide through our actions what sort of human I will be, good or bad. If I'm a person who steals all the time, those actions start to determine your character. I mean, I don't think, not in a sense like it determines you physically character, like you change, like you develop warts or something as kind of like an indicator that you're an evil person or something. People used to believe that, anyone read Canterbury Tales in high school or... Yeah. Okay. I mean, Geoffrey Chaucer kind of uses that idea, like, you put a wart on the nun's nose to show that she has some sort of defect. There's something that's bad about her or something like that. But the people who are good are always perfectly beautiful and stuff like that. Well, no, that's not the case. There can be people who are quite handsome and good looking that could be serial killers. That's part of their charm, And, it's probably tough for me at least for me, to imagine a serial killer who's killed multiple people, sitting in jail saying, yeah, but you know what? Generally, I'm still a good person, Mr. Means. I'm still a good person. I just killed 5 women, or killed people. But I'm still a good person. I feel like I'm a good person. Isn't that enough? My brain tells me I'm a good person, so I think I'm a good person. No, actions can, you can be it can make you a bad person if you're doing bad things all the time. So we have free. Oh, I already said that. In other words, human beings are designed to think about their experience in the world and to choose what to do about that experience. So humans are reasonable beings, hopefully. Hopefully. If you've ever been to a Taylor Swift concert, you might doubt that, Mr. Musa. Because people are going nuts, and crying. It produces even an emotional reaction just to see this woman. Jesus didn't get that. People are just like, oh yeah, there's that Jesus coming to town. All right, everybody inside. Because he's just going to tell us what to do or something, Bring out the cripples, though. Put them in the street, and then, he'll take care of them, But other than that, with Jesus, it's always preach, preach, preach. So we're reasonable human beings, but we're also responsible. We're responsible. You know, we have to take ownership for things that we do, for moral decisions that we make. And so hopefully a person is responsible, and also the person is responsible for thinking and choosing correctly. I mean, there are serious obligations. Let me see where I go with my next power. Okay, good. There are serious obligations. The fact that I'm responsible gives me an obligation to do things, for the choices that I make. I'll get to that in a second, I guess. So there are consequences for the choices I make, and even God expects them. So that's why, there might be, consequences for a choice that I make. Long-lasting consequences, serious consequences. I mean, there might be short-term consequences, like, I have to suffer or out of justice for something I've done to somebody. If I've stolen money or harmed another person, I have to make amends or whatever. But what if there might be long-lasting things, like if I commit murder or something and then I'm put into prison for the rest of my life? Well, there's my life gone. At least I'm not dead, I guess. But I'm not getting out except in a box. I'm in jail for the rest of my life. Okay? That's why I've never understood why people seem to have a problem with hell, with God. It's like life imprisonment. You've chosen that you wanted to do something, and there's a consequence. And it can be forever, which is like life in jail. It's forever. You ain't getting out. You're dying there. You're ending there. That's where you end up. So these are serious obligations, but on the positive side, these abilities that we have of reason and faith allow us as humans to be able to seek God, to look for God, and most importantly, to have a relationship with Him. That's the most important thing, to accept Him and His revelation of faith. That's why God does everything that He does. It's to be in a relationship with us. God's not like this eternal manager, CEO, who's just like moving pieces around, and stuff like that. And every now and then He has to cut the workforce and, send some people into the great beyond. And other people, other days like, you know what? We need more babies. So, another day God is having babies, making babies, putting souls in them, No, it's not like He's, a business manager over the universe. And some people can see it that way. Philosophically, it's called deism, where God is kind of like just this CEO of the universe. He just kind of creates the universe, but, He moves the pieces around every now and then to make things work. He tinkers with it a little bit, fine-tunes it. But for the most part, He stays absolutely away from it, and leaves it alone. No, God is pushy. He wants to be in a relationship with each and every one of us, each part of His creation. So faith and reason confer abilities on us, or capacities is a more philosophical way to put it. Faculties is an even more philosophical way to put it. A capacity or a desire for God, a desire which expresses itself in the world's religions. Where do they come from? Why do they pop up all over the place? Religion. People are seeking this relationship, even if they're not maybe particularly clear about what they're looking for. And that's number 33, but I'm referring to number 22, or 28. This is what I'm referring to now about our capacity for God and religion is from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 28. What's on the PowerPoint is 33, which I'll get to in a moment. So human beings come to know through their rational experience of human life in the physical world. And so these constitute the dual sources of authority for us. And so we read here, Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 33. Would anyone like to read that for me? Give Dr. Den a break. Anybody?
I'll read it.
Who's that? Ms. Egan? Go ahead.
The human person, with his openness to truth and beauty, his sense of moral goodness, his freedom and the force of his conscience, with his longings for the infinite and for happiness, man questions himself about God's existence. In all this, he discerns signs of the spiritual soul. The soul, the seed of eternity, be there in ourselves, irreducible to the very material, can have its origin only in God.
Okay, good. And the last part, they're quoting from a document. I forget which document it is. I'm curious. Take a look. Which document are you quoting from? Number 9. Oh, Gaudium et Spes. Okay, it's quoting from the Second Vatican Council. Well, we'll talk about the Second Vatican Council some other time. But anyways, okay, so good, our openness to truth and beauty, our sense of moral goodness, that there are good things that we should do, our desire for freedom, conscience, which is this kind of innate sense, even a feeling, could even be an emotional response that something's right or wrong for you. Your desire for things to never end, the infinite, okay? You kind of wonder, I wonder, which book I'll be reading when I finally die. Will God allow me to? I shouldn't say God allow me, but when it happens, it happens. Will I finish the book? Will I know what's going? Will I know the end, or if there's a new movie coming out in the theater, will I get to see the movie? Who knows? I could. Yes, Mr. Multi, I got you. I could die on my way home. You never know. But you always you think that you're going to live forever, and you see that again in movies and film and the culture, because you get these movies about what it will be like 3,000 years into the future in sci-fi films or something. Like you're going to be alive then, It's like, no, you're not. You're not going to make it out of this century, nor am I. Okay. So I don't know what it's going to be like. Why should I care what it's going to be like 3,000 years from now or 10,000 years from now in the future? Or in the past, we think like we can time travel. We can say, oh yeah, let's do a film about the Civil War, or do a film about, 300 with the Greek soldiers or the Roman soldiers from 2,000 years ago. But we weren't there. There's no possibility for us to be there, at least not us, because we have no time machines. But we have this desire, this weird desire in us to time travel and especially to go on forever. We want to know what's going on in the future. Happiness. We want to be happy. We want to be happy. And these things, these senses that we have, none of which is absolutely provable, we just have them, lead to the question of, is there something more? And maybe that's a definition of God, the something more. Maybe we shouldn't use the word God. We should say it's the something more. Okay? And we also discern something within us that wants that more, which is not the body. Even though we have a body. Okay? That's why they say, or in quoting Gaudium et Spes, that the soul is not it's not reducible to merely the material. No, they don't say it's not reducible to the matter. They accept the fact that we are embodied souls. We are embodied spirits. The two go together. Okay? As I said before, if the brain gets damaged, then the reason gets damaged. It can't work properly. It's there, but it doesn't have the ability to work properly. So aspects of the soul, faculties of the soul, can malfunction if you have maybe a psychological problem or a physical problem, because we're both. We're not ghosts. We're not spirits trapped in a prison of a body, and we're also not machines that are just a body. We seem to be more, and we know this. Here we are. How do you explain any of this? All right, if we're just machines, we're just evolved monkeys, just really clever monkeys who got lucky. We won the lottery. So even in our this is the way we live our lives. We kind of know something's going on. Call it a soul if you want. Don't call it a soul. Something's going on within this material thing, which is a machine. Yes, there are parts of a machine. Great. I don't deny that at all. But what's moving it? What started the spark? What is it in your mother's womb that all of a sudden took you from a bunch of cells coming together, and now all of a sudden it's a person, it's a living, it's alive. It's doing things on its own. How does that happen? From just cells that come together. So Scripture and tradition, the Bible, and what we believe about Christ are read and known in the light of human experience, which includes not just our faith, what we believe, but what we can think about as well. Okay? What's experience? Experience is a form of knowledge. It's a form of knowledge which comes from our direct observation. I guess it's direct. I guess it could also be, I guess I keep that word direct in there. Direct observation or participation in an event or activity. Okay? So, and it comes from the Greek word, or actually, the Latin word. We also have the Greek word in English, empirical, but based on, we also have the English word based on the Greek word empirical, but this word is based on a Latin experior, to try, to prove, to put to the test. And that's kind of what you do. You can tell the difference between someone who's tried to do something and someone who hasn't. Okay? Someone who's had little or no experience, usually you find this with older people. I'm not trying to be ageist, but, usually, because I have a mother and she's 82 and I love her to death, but she still can't figure out Roku. And I show her all the time, Mom, you go into the settings, you press, which button do I push on the thing? The middle button that says, okay, Mom. Okay. Yeah, she pushes it, and then you just go up or down, how do I do that? Mom, there are arrows that are up and down, It's like, I love her, and she figures it out. That's all right. She'll be watching this video anyway. She watches me on YouTube. But she doesn't have a lot of experience with the technological world. She was born in 1942. You'd think she would, because, she came about when she was still in her 30s and 40s. I didn't. I didn't grow up with cell phones. I didn't grow up with computers. I didn't encounter my first computer until the 5th grade. And that was an old, those big old honking gray IBM computers with floppy disks in. We just did little math games on it. We didn't really do anything. That was our introduction to it. And that was it until high school. And I had no computer until 1995. I think I bought my first computer. I didn't know what to do with the darn thing, but now I do. Experience. Okay. If I never done that, I would still have no experience. But I tried it out. I put it to the test. I've broken a lot of computers because I've messed around with the registry. I'm too curious. So I want to mess with stuff and I download little programs. What will this do? And I break the computer. So anyways, I've kind of learned from that. I have experience. I've been participating enough. And in my direct observations, I've seen what happens when I fiddle around with certain things too much when I shouldn't do them. And also benefited when I figured out, hey, I can do this. If I press control something on my computer, it'll select all the text in the document stuff. And maybe I didn't know how to do that before because I had no experience of it. So experience is a good thing. It's a big thing. It's not an infallible thing because our experiences can be wrong, and there are all sorts of things that can intervene. But it's not necessarily a wrong source for us either. Okay? We can rely on our experiences, even though they're not necessarily infallible. And we kind of know this, but we go with it anyways, because it's happened to me before. It might happen again. Notice, it might happen again. It could be wrong. Fallible. Right? It's not infallible. But if I've done this X amount of times, testing. Yes, that's scientific method. Tested it in a way. Then I can maybe infer that it's going to happen again. Sometimes the experience you have is unique. And that's what we'll talk about when we get to a man rising from the dead, who doesn't die anymore. Because people can actually come back from the dead, but they die. So sometimes you have singular experiences, which, again, can be fallible. People could not know what they're seeing. So all reality for Christianity hints at and whispers about God. Because it's God's world. His fingerprints are all over the place. If you brought in CSI Muskegon and you dusted the whole universe, you're going to buy these big fingerprints, Whose fingerprints are those? God has nice whirly swoops and stuff like that. Whose are those on that black hole? God! I'm assuming, or something. Of course, God doesn't have fingerprints because he's spirit, okay? He doesn't have a body. I'm not a Latter-day Saint or a Mormon, but if you're a Mormon, that would be perfectly fine, but not for a Catholic. That'd be a heretic. But it is God's world. So the world that we live in is also in some way part of God's revelation to human experience. It's part of our experience. So we can reason from it. We can have faith in it, too, that the world will just work the way it's supposed to work, So our response to God, if there is a God, occurs within the created world of experience. There's nothing abnormal about that. That's, because in some religions, it's the view is you want to get out of the physical world. The physical world is always changing. It's unreliable. So you want to just wipe it away, and you want to get to the direct experience of the divine. You find this in religions like Hinduism and stuff like that. Which I'm not saying, I love Indian food, so I'm not down on Hinduism. Oh, God bless the Hindus. Anyways, but I'm not a Hindu in the religion because I don't accept that. I find it more believable, for me, more rational that we live in a world of spirit and matter where the two are intertwined and interrelate, and that matter is part of my experience. And that's a good thing. Not all religions see it that way. Matter is not good in some religions, or even philosophical systems. Matter is an evil. That was one of the revolutions of Judaism. The Jews were like, no, the world is good. That was not the general opinion of the surrounding religions. So human beings respond through a dedicated attempt to reflect on God's world, and by making choices about how to live in it based on that reflection, on that reasonable reflection. Okay? I don't care whether you believe in climate change or not. I know that's a big bugaboo. When I was growing up, there was global warming. And the ozone layer. Does anyone talk about the ozone layer anymore? Still a big hole there. Huh? Yeah, I know. Well, it's Sigmund Freud said, our ultimate, everything humans do is to avoid death. Because we know we're going to die, we're scared to death. Except Freud had really no answer for it. You're going to die. But yeah, when I was growing up, the ozone layer, that the O3 is ozone, protects us from the radiation of the sun. There's still a big hole at the top by the North Pole. It hasn't gone away. It's discovered in the 80s. And that was the big thing for the 80s, was the ozone layer. That's why it get rid of all your hairspray and stuff like that, air conditioners and stuff. Then in the 90s, it became global warming. The Earth is heating up and stuff like that. Okay, now it's all climate change. Okay, fine. Whatever. What's my religious position on that? Well, the data is the data. The scientific data is what it is. You can accept it or don't. You can challenge it, you can question it. That's part of the scientific process, I think. I don't think there's untoward or inappropriate about it. I'm not a scientist, so I have to put my faith in the people who are climatologists, whatever. But as a Christian, I have to make decisions how I act in the world. And I didn't need climate change for my belief system to tell me that the world mattered to me, should matter to me, if I believed it came from my God, and it was something good that was given to me. It was a gift. You don't take a dump on the gift. Someone gives you a gift, you don't throw it down and then urinate on it. You treat it like it's garbage, which is how apparently a lot of us humans do. We treat literally like the world is a garbage dump in a lot of places, and the oceans as well. I can know that and make that choice about how to live just based on God as my authority. I don't need science or anything. That's how I should be living, I would think. And I'm doing this through reflecting on my relationship with God and what I believe, how he wants me to act in the world, and through my reason. Just through my reason, I know it's not a good thing to pollute things. You don't want dirty water. Like, at the last Olympics, they wanted to have the triathlon in the Seine River, which runs through Paris. Greatly polluted river. People told the French authorities, there's no way you're going to be able to clean this up before. They said, okay, we'll just dump billions of francs into it, or I guess euros now in France, and it wasn't clean. Because that takes time to clean stuff up. I'm not saying they couldn't clean it up, but it just takes more time than they had. That's not a good thing to me. Even if I didn't believe in a God, I'd be like, company on a river dumping all sorts of bleach and deadly chemicals into the river that they can't use, and people are going to drink that water, maybe. Not a good thing. My reason tells me that. But experience has limitations. Experience has limitations. It's not infallible. And so even when we interpret the sources of authority, whether it's tradition, the beliefs that have been handed down, or the Bible itself, scriptures, we have to interpret them, or should interpret them, I should say, into the experience of our times. Not just the experience of the first people, but it's also the experience of what it says for us. We can know the experience of the first people through biblical studies and archaeology and stuff. That's fine, but that's not and it could be just a dead history to some people. Oh, it's just, that's what they did 3,000 years ago in Palestine, amongst these little sheep herders and whatever. But it's more than that. It translates into the experience. We have to bring it into the experience of today as well. Okay. Hopefully you've read this. I think I put it on the readings, Dei Filius. If you haven't read it yet, just take a look at it. They're excerpts. I'll start talking about it. I'm not going to get through all of it before we go for the week. But just so you know, the First Vatican Council, Dei Filius statement, one of the statements they made, and this one was called On the Catholic Faith, where they talk about the relationship between reason and faith. Because the Catholic Church at that time felt that both needed to be defended. Because on one hand, you had people who were attacking faith and saying, well, science answers everything. Okay, well, look at all the advances of modern science. So we don't need faith. Faith is from the period of our childhood. Okay, and it doesn't answer anything. Which in some way is true. I mean, religion does not do a good job of telling us how the world works. That's not its purpose. If you assume that's its purpose, vaya con Dios, my friend. But then when you read the Bible and the earth is flat and the sun moves in the sky, you got to explain how that works to me, But anyways. And on the other hand, reason. There are some people who are arguing, religious people, just have faith. Forget about the sciences. Forget about what human science tells you about anything. Just believe. Believe in something. And the church said, no, that's wrong too. That's not the proper way to go either. And this all came to a head at this council, the First Vatican Council, which was held between 1869 and 1870. It was held under Pope Blessed Pius IX, who was Pope from 1846 to 78, long time. I think he's one of the longest reigning, if not the longest reigning, I think. And he's blessed, so he's on his way to sainthood. The next step is sainthood. I don't know if he'll make it because he's kind of an anti-Semite. Kidnapped a little Jewish boy from his parents and raised him in the Vatican and stuff like, Holy Father. He's like, what else can I do? He was baptized, so in his eyes he was a Christian, so he should be raised as a Christian. Anyways, but other than that, he seems to have been a good and righteous man. He's trying to do the right thing, even though he made mistakes along the way, as I guess do I as well, so who am I to judge? But anyways, it held under Pope Pius IX, okay? And it was held in Rome, the city of Rome, in the Vatican, okay? And maybe I wonder if I have a picture of that. There's a picture of him. One of the first pictures we have of the popes, because they developed photographic technology. So someone took a picture of Pope Pius there. He looks like a happy dude. Looks like they're feeding him well, It's good to be the Pope, Chapman. At the end of the day, you know, get the Cardinals come in, they massage your feet. Did I put that? No, I did not. Let me show you. Oh, I'm losing you. There we are, Gwynedd Valley. Up to Italy and to Rome. If you go into Rome, in the city of Rome is actually the nation state called the City of the Vatican. So you can find this. There it is, right there. Smallest country in the world. And that's where they held it. And the major church in the city is St. Peter's Cathedral, which was built on Vatican Hill. The name of the hill was Vaticanus, so it's Vatican Hill. Hence, it's also called the Vatican. Okay, there are several hills in the city of Rome. And that's where they built this huge church of St. Peter's. And inside the church is where they held the council. But this first Vatican Council, because because there'd be another one. There would be another one in the 1960s called the Second Vatican Council. At the time this was held, it was just called the Council, the Vatican Council. And a council is, you know, as you might expect, it's a group that comes together to make decisions on matters of what they want to, their policies, what they want to do, stuff like that. So it's no different for the church, okay? The bishops came together because there were questions that they felt needed to be addressed. And so they did it here on the Vatican Hill. So it's the first Vatican Council. 1869 to 1870, the council actually did not officially end. Okay, got you. Give me 1 second. Let me just say this. The council did not actually officially end, but they had to flee. Because in 1870, there was a war started between the French and the Prussian Empire. The Prussian Empire was an empire that extended from Lithuania, modern-day Lithuania, across Poland. There was no Poland, actually, at the time. It was part of Prussia. Poland into Germany. And they started a war with the French. And they started marching down into Italy, and it scared all the bishops. And they all fled. They all went and said, okay, let's come back. And they never came back, actually. So one of the first actions of the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s was to actually formally end the First Vatican Council, because it technically never ended. But as they did the council, they were able to produce 2 documents. One related to papal infallibility, the Pope's ability to teach without error in the church, but the other one was on the Catholic faith, on faith and reason. So we'll talk about that next week. God bless you all. Please remember the quiz that's coming up. And yes, all of this will be on the quiz. And Dei Filius, if it's on the reading. Have a good day, everybody. Oh, Mr. Trost. Is it working, Mr. Trost? Good. I'm glad.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, miss.